The state of copium continues. Following the news of Sony confirming real exclusives are back, it seems the only on PlayStation is now happens on PS5. Copium number 1. So it's not only on PS5? Followed by, that's a weird way to phrase that if they're not putting games on PC anymore. I think they're still sitting on the PlayStation PC store and Shrier only has half the story. They could pull games from Steam to make them exclusive to their store. And I think Wolverine would be a great way to announce that.
Oh, my sweet summer child.
Listen, honey, buddy, bruh, broski, it's not happening. Wolverine is not coming to PC. Herman Hulst literally said in a meeting that single-player games stay on PlayStation moving forward. Stop coping and doing these record-breaking, insane mental gymnastics and buy a PS5/PS5 Pro if you want to play upcoming PS5 titles. Here are the biggest gaming leaks and news you've probably missed this week.
Or if a man plays the fool, then it's only fools he'll persuade, but appear to be the devil. And all men will submit.
Daddy, chill.
Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced might be the most exciting Ubisoft project in years. And I don't say that lightly, because look, Black Flag is not just another Assassin's Creed game people remember fondly. For a lot of players, this is the one. This is the pirate fantasy. This is the game where you didn't just follow waypoints, you lived in the world. You sailed, you hunted treasure, you boarded ships, you upgraded the jackdaw, you got lost in storms, you listened to your crew sing shanties, and somehow Ubisoft accidentally made one of the best pirate games ever. And now, somehow, Resynced actually sounds like it understands that. The most encouraging thing from these previews is that Ubisoft Singapore seems to be treating this like a proper remake, not a cheap nostalgia cash-in. The game is rebuilt on the newer Anvil engine, with ray-traced global illumination, upgraded reflections, modern water simulation, new assets, PBR materials, and 60 FPS console options. That is exactly what this game needed. Not a reinvention, not a weird live service pivot. Just take one of Ubisoft's best worlds ever and make it feel alive again for modern hardware. And visually, this thing sounds stunning. Havana at sunset, storms rolling over the ocean, ships tearing through crystal blue water, jungles, underwater wrecks, ray-traced lighting bouncing across the environment. Black Flag already had one of the strongest atmospheres in the entire franchise, so giving that world a real next-gen visual rebuild could be massive. But the soul of this thing is still Edward Kenway. Matt Ryan is back, and that matters. He didn't just voice Edward, he gave that character swagger, charm, ego, pain, and humanity. And according to recent interviews, coming back to Edward after all these years was emotional for him too. That's the kind of thing you want to hear, because Black Flag only works if Edward still feels like Edward. Not a rebooted version, not a sanitized version. Edward Kenway, the pirate who slowly realizes there's something bigger than gold, fame, and running from himself. And apparently, the new story content is not just filler either. We're getting extra material focused on Edward, new naval officers, and expanded character moments that are supposed to add more depth instead of replacing what people love. That's the right move. Don't rewrite Black Flag into something else. Add texture, add new layers. Give returning fans a reason to come back while keeping the original emotional spine intact. The gameplay changes also sound mostly positive. Stealth now has a proper crouch button, which honestly should have been there forever, but hey, better late than never. Tailing missions have reportedly been reworked, so instant failure is not constantly breathing down your neck, which is a blessing because we all know those old-school Assassin's Creed fail states could be absolutely brutal. Parkour is faster, the world still feels built around movement, and naval combat is still the centerpiece. That's the part that makes me most optimistic, because the sailing was always the magic trick. Naval combat in Black Flag had weight. You felt the ship turn, you felt the cannons hit, you felt the chaos when you boarded another vessel, and the whole thing turned into this ridiculous pirate brawl. If Resynced keeps that feeling while modernizing the presentation, Ubisoft might genuinely have something special here. Now yes, some previews mention combat jank. I'm not going to ignore that. The new melee system seems like the one area that still needs polish. Some impressions say it mixes old Assassin's Creed parrying with newer RPG-style tools, and sometimes it gets messy. But here's the thing, Black Flag was never loved because it had the deepest sword combat in gaming history. It was loved because it sold the fantasy better than almost anything else Ubisoft ever made. The world, the music, the ocean, the freedom, the sense of adventure. That's what has to land. And so far, it sounds like that part is absolutely landing. Now, with all that positivity said, I do have one major concern with Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced so far. And honestly, this is the kind of thing that could genuinely hurt the experience if Ubisoft gets it wrong. The cutscene quality in some of the new side missions. And I'm sorry, but I genuinely cannot understand Ubisoft's obsession lately with using these generic RPG-style dialogue systems instead of proper motion capture for new content. Because from what people are describing, some of these newer side mission scenes apparently have Edward animated almost like Cassandra or Eivor from the RPG games. That same overly stiff body language, those weird looping gestures, that slightly uncanny constant smile plastered on the face while characters talk. And it stands out badly in Black Flag specifically because the original game's cutscenes were insanely well directed for the time. Seriously, go back and watch the original Black Flag cinematics. The facial animation, the camera work, the performances, the motion capture, that stuff still looks shockingly lifelike even today. Edward feels human. The conversations feel cinematic. There's weight behind every expression and movement. So when you suddenly cut from those beautifully mo-capped story scenes into newer content where characters are standing around doing RPG idle animations with recycled gestures, it creates this tonal whiplash that's impossible not to notice. And look, I already know the counter-argument, it's just side content. But that excuse doesn't even fully work here because the original Black Flag side content was motion captured too. The Templar hunts, major side missions, a lot of those optional storylines still had cinematic presentation and handcrafted performances. Ubisoft themselves already set that standard back in 2013. So this is where the frustration comes from. This is a remake, a full remake. And honestly, one of the most important parts of a remake is making sure the new content matches the quality and identity of the old content. Otherwise, the cracks immediately start showing. And this is where my biggest fear comes in. Apparently, there are 8 new story missions being added into Resynced. Now imagine if those missions are using this lower quality RPG cutscene system too. That would be rough, like genuinely rough, because then the new missions would instantly stand out from the original campaign in every possible bad way. Instead of blending naturally into Black Flag, they'd feel like awkward fan fiction DLC stitched into the middle of a classic game. So it would be incredibly disappointing if the new story additions ended up feeling cheaper and less polished than content Ubisoft already made 13 years ago. Nobody is asking for Hollywood-level performance capture on every random NPC interaction, but for major new missions in a beloved remake? Yeah, I absolutely think people expect that level of care, especially when the original game already had it. Warhorse just accidentally became one of the most exciting studios in gaming right now. So, yeah, this is real. During the latest Embracer financial presentation, it was officially confirmed that Warhorse is currently working on 2 separate games. One of them is a brand new Kingdom Come adventure. The other, an open-world Middle-earth RPG. And the internet immediately lost its mind. This is kind of the dream combo. You've got a studio that already proved they can make gritty, immersive, grounded RPGs with incredible world building through Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and now they're being handed Middle-earth, an IP that has honestly been weirdly neglected in gaming for years. Think about it. Outside of Middle-earth Shadow of Mordor and a couple of decent moments here and there, Middle-earth hasn't really had that massive modern RPG treatment people have been begging for. The books are legendary, the movies are iconic, but gaming? It's felt dormant for a long time, and now Warhorse might be the team bringing it back. What's important here, though, is separating this from the other recent Lord of the Rings investment news. Earlier reports mentioned a massive UAE-backed investment fund throwing around roughly 100 million euros toward another Lord of the Rings game project. That is apparently not this game. Different project, different studio. So there are actually multiple Middle-earth games in development right now, which is honestly insane to think about. Now, the really interesting part is the wording around the second project. Embracer described it as a new Kingdom Come adventure, and that opens up a lot of questions. Is it a full sequel, a spin-off, a smaller standalone expansion, something more focused and cinematic? Because from the information floating around right now, it sounds like the Kingdom Come project is already in full production, with roughly 250 developers involved, while the Middle-earth RPG is still very early in pre-production. And yeah, apparently the Lord of the Rings game may use Unreal Engine 5 instead of Warhorse's proprietary tech. That immediately made some people nervous, because the second gamers hear Unreal Engine 5 open-world game, everybody starts getting PTSD flashbacks about about stutter compilation issues and performance problems. But I wouldn't panic yet. Warhorse absolutely cooked with the tech in Kingdom Come 2. The game looked gorgeous, ran well, and felt polished. If they're moving to Unreal, there's probably a reason. Maybe licensing support, maybe fantasy-specific tools, maybe collaboration tech being developed alongside projects like The Witcher 4. Epic has been heavily investing in open-world RPG pipelines lately, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if some of those tools are becoming very attractive for studios like Warhorse. And here's the thing people are really locking onto. This next Kingdom Come game might arrive way sooner than expected. There's this story floating around from KCD FanFest in Prague last year, where someone close to Warhorse casually hinted that 4 to 5 years is a long time to wait, when fans were speculating about the next game. At the time, nobody really knew what that meant, but now, reports suggest this new Kingdom Come project could launch as early as next fiscal year, potentially next year. That changes everything, because suddenly this starts sounding less like Kingdom Come 3 built from scratch, and more like a tighter, faster follow-up using the foundation they already built with KCD 2. And honestly, that's probably the smartest thing they could do. Modern RPG development is getting absurd. 7, 8, sometimes 10-year dev cycles are becoming normal. But one of the biggest industry shifts right now is studios learning to iterate instead of reinventing everything every single time. Think The Legend of Zelda: Tears of the Kingdom building off Breath of the Wild instead of throwing the entire framework away. Warhorse already spent years refining systems, animation pipelines, optimization, AI behavior, quest design, all of it. Reusing and evolving that foundation could let them move much faster. And narratively, the obvious direction is the Hussite Wars. If you played the Kingdom Come games, you already know the shadow of those wars hangs over everything. It's the natural escalation point for the story. Massive civil conflict, political chaos, religious warfare, medieval brutality. Honestly, it fits Warhorse perfectly. But then you zoom back out and realize they're also making a Middle-earth RPG on top of all this. And that's the part that feels surreal, because there are very few studios I'd actually trust with Middle-earth right now. Warhorse is one of them. Maybe CD Projekt is another. But Warhorse understands immersion. They understand grounded storytelling. They understand living worlds. That matters. The big question now is what kind of Middle-earth game this actually becomes. Do they follow established lore closely? Do they go off into side stories like Shadow of Mordor did? Do you create your own character, pick factions, wander through a massive RPG version of Middle-earth? There's so much potential here, it's honestly ridiculous. This is actually huge news for Helldivers 2, and honestly, it feels like the kind of update the game desperately needed heading into the second half of 2026. Because for a while now, a lot of the conversation around Helldivers 2 has been focused on content drops, balance drama, enemy factions, and the whole "is the game dying" discourse every single month. But underneath all of that, there's been this lingering technical conversation that a lot of players have quietly been bringing up for almost a year now. The game runs well enough most of the time, sure, especially considering the scale of the chaos on screen, but visually, Helldivers 2 has always had this weird inconsistency to it. Sometimes it looks absolutely stunning, like a proper next-gen battlefield with explosions everywhere, dynamic lighting, insane particle effects, ships falling from orbit, bugs swarming the screen. Then other times, the image quality looks soft, washed out, muddy, or weirdly foggy, especially during heavy combat or on certain planets. And now, Arrowhead is finally acknowledging that technical side of the experience in a massive way. They just announced something called the Optimizing Liberty Project, which is basically a long-term initiative focused entirely on performance improvements and technical upgrades across PC, PlayStation, and now Xbox platforms as well. The first major update launches May 27th, and this isn't some tiny patch note buried in a blog post. This is a serious overhaul of the game's rendering pipeline and upscaling support. On PC, they're adding DLSS 4.5, FSR 4, fallback support for FSR 3.1.5, plus XESS 3.0. So basically, every major modern upscaling technology is now getting proper support. That alone is a gigantic deal, because Helldivers 2 can get insanely CPU and GPU heavy during massive firefights, especially at higher resolutions. And they're not stopping there. NVIDIA Reflex and AMD Anti-Lag 2 are being added as well, which should reduce input latency pretty significantly. Then you've also got dynamic resolution scaling and variable rate shading coming into the mix too. which should help stabilize performance during those insane, everything is exploding and the frame rate is fighting for its life moments. But honestly, the console side might be even more interesting. Base PS5 and Xbox consoles are getting FSR 3.1 upscaling support, while the PS5 Pro is finally getting official PSSR support. That's the big one for me personally, because Helldivers 2 always felt like the exact type of game that should benefit massively from Sony's machine learning upscaling tech. Huge battles, heavy particle effects, dense foliage, long sightlines, chaotic movement everywhere. That's literally the kind of workload where PSSR can shine if implemented properly. And VRR support is finally being pushed harder on PS5 consoles too, which honestly should have been emphasized earlier, because this game at unlocked frame rates with VRR can feel dramatically smoother during heavy combat. Now here's the part I find really interesting. Arrowhead specifically called this the first step in a much larger roadmap of technical updates planned throughout the year. That wording matters because this doesn't sound like a one-and-done patch. It sounds like they've realized Helldivers 2 needs a visual and performance evolution if they want the game to stay dominant long-term. Because let's be real for a second, the gameplay loop is still fantastic. The co-op chaos is still unmatched. Few games create those, holy crap, we survived that somehow, moments better than Helldivers 2. But visually, the game has started to age faster than people expected. Not because the graphics are bad, but because the presentation can feel flat sometimes. And this is where I completely agree with one major criticism people keep bringing up: the color palette. I swear, sometimes Helldivers 2 looks like somebody smeared gray dust over the entire screen. There's this constant haze and fog layered over everything that kills contrast and vibrancy. The explosions pop, sure, but the actual environments can feel desaturated in a way that almost fights against the game's own art direction. And it's weird because underneath that foggy presentation, there's actually a beautiful game there. Some planets have incredible lighting. The armor designs are fantastic. The skyboxes look insane during orbital strikes. But the image often lacks punch. It lacks clarity. It lacks that crisp contrast that makes scenes instantly memorable. All right, let's jump into some quick shots because we've still got a ton of gaming news to talk about. First up, Crimson Desert continues to quietly become one of the biggest success stories of the year. And honestly, I don't think enough people are talking about it. Pearl Abyss revealed during their recent financial call that the game has already generated over $178 million in revenue, with sales split almost perfectly 50-50 between PC and consoles. That is seriously impressive for a brand new IP trying to break into a brutally competitive market. And the crazy part is, the game still feels like it has momentum. They're patching it constantly, pushing updates almost every week, listening to feedback, tweaking systems, improving performance, adding quality of life features. You can tell this is a studio that understands they've got something special on their hands, and they're trying to keep that momentum alive long term. They also confirmed they're exploring DLC and expansions. And honestly, I think this could become huge if they handle it correctly. Personally, I think they should go big with it. Don't rush some tiny expansion out the door. Make it substantial. Then relaunch the game around early 2027 with a massive content drop and a complete edition type push, because the foundation is already there. And visually, Crimson Desert still looks absolutely insane. Some of the best lighting, destruction, and environmental detail we've seen in years. It genuinely feels like one of those games that's helping push the industry forward technically. Now next up, we've got a fresh God of War rumor floating around again. The Snitch, who used to be one of the biggest gaming leakers before disappearing for a while, recently posted another tease hinting at this rumored smaller God of War spin-off project. Apparently, it could be revealed relatively soon. Now personally, I'm still cautious here, because the Snitch's track record lately has been a little inconsistent compared to the old days. But the timing does make sense because Sony almost always holds a state of play around late May or early June. And honestly, PlayStation's lineup is getting stacked enough where a smaller God of War project actually fits nicely between bigger flagship titles like Wolverine and Intergalactic. I still don't fully know if this rumored project is the one more thing type reveal people are expecting though. Sony already has a lot cooking right now, and Wolverine especially feels like their main priority heading into the second half of the generation. Still, if we suddenly get a God of War reveal during the next showcase, I would not be shocked whatsoever. Now, speaking of games looking incredible, I need to talk about Forza Horizon 6 for a second because wow! The game is currently sitting at a 92 on Metacritic, making it one of the highest rated releases releases of the year so far. And honestly, Xbox finally looks like it might have a serious Game Awards contender again. Even people who aren't hardcore racing fans seem impressed by this thing. The visuals are absurd, the sense of speed looks fantastic, and some of the environmental detail is genuinely next-gen. That Gundam-themed race people keep sharing online looks absolutely insane. Next up, 007 First Light is getting very close now, and honestly, I think this could end up being one of the sleeper hits of the year. Everything we've heard about it so far makes it sound like this really cinematic mix between modern espionage, stealth sandbox gameplay, and globe-trotting action. Kind of like if old-school Bond energy collided with Hitman-style creativity and Uncharted-style spectacle. And honestly, that combination sounds amazing. The game officially launches very soon, and there's a good chance additional previews or even reviews start surfacing over the next week or two. I'm really curious about this one because IO Interactive feels like the perfect studio for Bond. Hitman already proved they understand disguises, infiltration, player freedom, tension, social stealth, all of that stuff. Translating that DNA into a Bond game just makes sense. And finally, quick reminder that the new PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium lineup is actually pretty solid this month. Star Wars Outlaws is one of the biggest additions, which honestly feels like a perfect Game Pass-style pickup for people who were curious but hesitant at full price. And we're also seeing Red Dead Redemption 2 returning to the service again, which is still hilarious. This is literally one of the best-selling games of all time. We're talking about a game that has made absurd amounts of money for Rockstar over the years, and they still have not given PS5 players a proper 60 FPS patch. Like, genuinely, at this point, it feels almost criminal, especially now that we're deep into the PS5 generation and the hardware can obviously handle it. People have been begging for a native 60 FPS mode for years. Every time Red Dead 2 trends online, half the comments are literally just, "Please give us 60 FPS." They know people would replay the entire game instantly if they dropped that update tomorrow. That's the crazy thing. Rockstar is sitting on what would basically become a free, massive relaunch overnight. Especially on PS5 Pro with improved image quality and smoother performance, people would absolutely jump back in immediately. But nope, we're still out here riding horses at 30 FPS in 2026 like outlaws trapped in time.
We need money!
If you enjoyed this video, hey, maybe drop a like. It really helps a lot and tells me you want more. Subscribe for day one gaming leaks and news, and check out these videos you probably missed. Trust me, they're worth it.